All right, greetings everyone. I am here again with Jeff Tadlock of Stairway to Reason. And I invited him again because there were some topics that we did not get a chance to speak about. And I thought that it would be a great time to actually speak about some of the things that is really important and I think bridging that gap of misunderstanding between the atheists and the theists or the religious people in the world would actually really help bring forth peace. And I just want to say that, Jeff, you inspired a new playlist to start on my channel, and I'm really excited for kind of the future prospects of this, is the White Council meetings, in which I'm gathering voices of, intellect and those that I respect into showing their perspectives so that people don't always hear from me, but they hear from other people and perspectives, and we put them together, and we actually can come to a better understanding. And I think that that's what the White Council meetings were all about, was, coming together. How can we fight the darkness? And the darkness, to me, if you ever watch my videos, it's all about the ignorance. And ignorance is really the major darkness in this world. And once we shine a light on each other's perspectives, we gain a better understanding of each other. And that actually brings forth more of the light and the love that we are all seeking. So I wanted to thank you for that inspiration, and welcome back.
Well, I'm honored to be in the White Council. It sounds lovely.
Good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, so I wanted to start off with some of the topics that I did not get a chance to ask you about. So I know that you can't speak for all atheists, but I would love to hear your perspective, because the historical figure of Jesus Christ is something that is really embedded in mankind. And that is probably the main focus and pinnacle of what religious people really try to embody in spirit and in just energy and their consciousness. And so what I want people to see is, how can an atheist understand what Jesus Christ was or who he was? Do you think that he existed really? Or, what is your take on Jesus?
Okay, well, there's a lot of takes on Jesus, and so I am going to only represent my own take, which is I've educated myself thoroughly in this field, and I would say that the historical Jesus, as you mentioned, has been extremely distorted and continues to be distorted with every generation, every millennia. But my take on Jesus is, to me, I'm more scientifically inclined and historically inclined, and my take is that he was a revolutionary type character. He was a person who preached the apocalypse. It was a very popular fad at that time in Roman history. 30 AD, at the peak of Jesus, was also the peak of the whole apocalyptic buzz that Rome was going to burn. So I believe that Jesus was a revolutionary, and he was killed by Rome on those for what they would call crimes of being a rebel. But the thing is, I think there's traces of the historical Jesus that we can discover, and that Jesus was probably a person who was fighting against inequality. It sounds like Jesus wanted to fight for women's rights. He wanted to fight for the poor, for the diseased. And so it seems to me like it was one of those cases where the good guy got taken out by the big dog. And in that aspect, I think that Jesus was probably right on the money for what he was teaching. But as it intertwined with the Jewish scriptures and it got all reinterpreted into religious language, we lost that, I think. The Christian church, I think, still carries some of that goodwill with it, obviously. It's a tenet of their faith, but the fable of it has just gone too far, especially this dynamic of heaven and hell, to where if you don't swear allegiance to the Abrahamic God or Jesus, you're going to be tortured and fire and brimstone and weeping and gnashing of teeth in an afterlife. This is disgusting, and we should eliminate these awful ideas. And so to get straight to the point, I think you're trying to lead into is that, yes, I am very friendly with spiritualism, but I am not friendly and combative against spiritualism that tries to convert the entire world to one theology and preaches condemnation and eternal hell if you do not sign up. So those are the religious ideas I'm firmly against. And at the council, I would throw my fist on the table and say, we must get rid of this garbage.
Now, would you say that it's wise to try to embody the characteristics and maybe the qualities that Jesus did teach and leave mankind? As an atheist, you don't think that that should be thrown out, right?
No, I mean, as I said, if we really just strip down all the Jesus religion and get down to the historical Jesus, which many scholars, mind you, don't believe Jesus even existed. I am among the camp that seems to think he most likely did exist, and that the real historical Jesus was a Robin Hood type character that fought for the poor and the weak, and for women. It seems to be the case for Jesus. And yes, I think we should definitely embrace that aspect of the historical Jesus, for sure. And Jesus is not the only person who's acted this way, who's been a Robin Hood type character in cultures and societies. Anybody who fights for equality for women and to help the poor, those are good folks. Those are people we want to put on a pedestal.
I think that's really wise to be able to say that, to say, I don't necessarily embrace the Christian religion or the idea of organized religion, but to be able to say that the characteristics and some of the qualities that Jesus Christ had is something that we should be able to look at and in a deeper level and to be able to embrace more. And so I absolutely do agree. I have actually seen personally that the idea of Jesus sometimes can come between people, because if you do not accept Jesus in the way that they think and that they view Jesus to be, then you are seen as, the devil. You are seen as something that they are against, their enemy. And I think that
Yes.
that is very wrong. And you kind of touched basis on it, and you said that that's disgusting, because sometimes I don't think that religious people actually get a chance to have a mirror in front of them and to be able to look at their own behavior and to hear the voices of their fellow mankind that says, look, we are tired of you persecuting us and telling us that we're going to go to hell. And you say, well, it's in the book, but you are enforcing that. And I made a video called, it was all about persecution. When you experience persecution, how you're supposed to deal with that spiritually, because I don't think that people who are of a religious nature know what that does to another person, but it causes guilt, it causes shame, it causes very negative feelings in that other person. And it's the opposite of actually providing peace and actually providing love and charity and generosity, which is what, Jesus did teach. And I think that that's the problem, is that the persecution and what you said, as you touched on it, when Jesus is used as a way to condemn others, that is something that we do need to get rid of in the new world, and
it turns into a profitable business, because the more people you get to sign up, the more powerful you become. And so they seek world dominance.
Yes, I definitely agree with that.
So
that's great. Now, have you seen that you are kind of a different atheist in that idea, or because your community is different? I mean, my people are very spiritual. some of the New Agers, but also mystics and religious people that are more mystic rather and spiritual rather than literal. I don't necessarily, my vibe tribe is not organized religious people. It's very hard for them to understand me and where I come from in accepting all types of truths and religions and spirituality. But your community that you center yourself around are other atheists like you. So I'm curious, is this a general idea of how atheists do talk about Jesus in their, kind of closed circles? Do you talk like this with your other atheists?
Absolutely. I think atheists have a real grudge against Christianity and Islam, partly because they're kind of the McDonald's of religion. They just kind of permeate everything. They're in our politics. They're just everywhere, and it bothers me. See, I'm okay with spirit. I wish I had spiritualism, honestly. I think people get the wrong idea of atheists. I would love to be a spiritual person and love to believe in all these wonderful, warm and fuzzy ideas. I just haven't found any spirituality. I would need to have something very profound happen to me. I can't make believe. And so as an atheist, if something truly spiritual happened to me, I would adopt that. But nothing has ever happened to me, and I'm very skeptic. I'm very strict in I need evidences and things like this. But I'm not against spiritualism. But let me just say, it really bugs me that that other spiritualists, people who are spiritual, people who I welcome, people that I would be more than happy to do a powwow and a rain dance with my spiritual Native American friends. I would get right in there and pray to the moon with them, whatever, and love it, just absolutely love it. What I really am bothered by how, because Christianity is so big and so powerful, you have all these other spiritual groups that lend credence to Christianity, that try to attach themselves to it in some sort of way by saying, oh, well, I don't believe in this, but Jesus was a good, and Jesus was this. And I notice, like, even Native American spiritualism, Jesus was this. They all give credence to Jesus in some sort of way, and in a way kind of backing up Christianity. And I just wish that spiritual people would recognize just how powerful Christianity is and how wrong it is, how much fable is throughout its history, and stop lending credibility to Christianity. And I wish spiritual people would speak out more and divorce itself more from this religion that is basically McDonald's. They do not have the best tasting hamburger. I'm sorry, they don't. They're just huge. They're just everywhere. And so everybody tends to lend them, credibility. And I think we should stop doing that. They are a poisonous religion.
Yeah, I mean, like I said in my other video, I don't think that, I'm just thinking logically here. I don't think that we can get rid of everything, but we definitely can try to transform religion. And I know that atheists have a different perspective, but I guess maybe I'm more pessimistic. Maybe
we want to expose corruption.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I don't find your religion or you don't call it a religion, thankfully, your spirituality, I don't find you corrupt. I don't sense any corruption in you. I sense corruption in the Abrahamic church. All of them. I sense corruption.
Well, I agree. There is a lot of corruption within religion in that way. So I think that is really great to be able to show, and I'm hoping that some religious people will be able to watch this and say, okay, so atheists don't have anything against Jesus. They're not trying to bring down Jesus in the same way that the Roman and the Pharisees were in the past. It's a different type of idea. It's that they do not like what Jesus has now become a representative of with the control of the churches.
I think that's correct. Yes.
So I think that I think is very powerful in the idea of bringing forth understanding between religious people and atheists. And I think that, you know, this is where we start the discussion. And the Dalai Lama said the best thing, that in order to have peace, we really need to have discussions on peace. So,
Yes.
so is this something that have you ever spoken to another religious person, and have you been able to see eye to eye, or have a peaceful discussion about this in the nature?
In fact, a few of your followers have come over to my page and
cool.
interacted with me a few times. And yes, very friendly, you have very wonderful people. And absolutely, I mean, it's fun, it's exciting. And even if I perceive it as just imagination, I'm a creative person too. I love imagination. I love wonderment, and spirituality captures a lot of that. So I'm not afraid of it, very warm and welcoming to it.
Oh, that's great. So I'm really happy that we kind of bridged a little bit to each other. And
I try to, and let me interject just one more thing. You refer to me an atheist, and I don't mind that at all. I mean, I do not believe in a God or any gods, so that's a fine label for me. But I do try to shy away from labels and represent that on my page. You're welcome to continue calling me an atheist. That's totally fine, because it works within the dialogue that you're trying to have here. But I am actually kind of maybe a little bit of a different kind of atheist type person, because I don't really adopt that label. I'm just a little bit more open and to wonderment and ideas, and so I don't like really being labeled.
would you say that you're more agnostic? Because I know that is another spectrum of atheism.
It is. There's a lot of atheists that call themselves agnostic, and a lot of agnostics that I don't really know. I've seen people break down the meaning of these words, but I pay very little attention to it. I think agnosticism is very, very similar to atheism, and they definitely group together.
Okay, so you're just you, and you're just a unique, expression, and that's it. So
yeah, agnostic might better define me if you were just to look at the dictionary terms.
Okay. Well, that's good. I'm glad that you got a chance to explain yourself more. I definitely want to do that. And I really, you're right. I mean, I am just kind of calling you an atheist in order to, just define what it is that I'm doing here.
Yes, which is fine. I represent atheists, and you know that, so it's fine.
I would say that you attract an atheist crowd. With the type
very much so. Yeah.
So you might start maybe to attract more of the agnostic crowd too, which is good, because that allows more people to come over. I know that on my channel, I seem to have a nice variety, and I think that I actually have a lot of agnostic people who just don't have a clear spiritual path, but they feel something, or they're understanding about something. Something more than just this life. And they don't know, but they're interested in learning more. And so I would definitely say that. So let's get to the fun stuff now. That was, of course, fun. Jesus is always fun. But I really wanted to see, because something that I have been very involved with, if you've ever got a chance to watch some of my videos, I take on the Elven soul type, and my whole thing is that I'm all about organic and natural type of evolution of mankind. I do like science. I'm very much interested in science. I do like technology. I mean, we're using it right now, but I do believe in this kind of balance with technology. And what I have researched and found out is that if you understand about the transhumanist whole agenda, and I mean, the transhumanists are a very large organization, and they have many organizations around the world. And they would say that they are atheists, and they believe that science is something that can help humanity achieve, a longer lifespan, and basically be able to integrate technology into the body. And so religion sometimes poses as a threat to transhumanists because, and you touched on it on the last video, because in some religious minds, God does not want us to touch, technology and to form it together in that kind of way. So there's a little bit of that. It's science versus religion, and it's that age-old battle that goes on. What is your perspective on science, and where are we going in the future? You can talk about artificial intelligence here. Do you represent the transhumanists? Are you aware of that agenda? Are you aware of those organizations?
I'm not aware of those organizations. If I've come across that terminology, it didn't set in my memory. But it reminds me of a story early in the book of Genesis in the Bible about how mankind were building a tower, and it got so high that it angered God, because God was worried that they would build the tower so high that they would reach up into heaven and be able to see all the mechanics of God and whatnot. So God changed their languages and spread them all about. And so I wonder what God would think of the space station. I
Right.
mean, it seems like the story's far-fetched, because back in those days, they quite literally believed that God was up in the clouds. And that story represents that. And that's why you see angels are often depicted with wings and whatnot. Because heaven was up there, and of course hell was down there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's not the case anymore. We can now throw those books out with Bronze Age thinking. And so science not only is helping us eliminate fable from our societies, especially developed countries. Religion is shrinking fast. Maybe not spiritualism. I'll try to keep those two separate, but organized religion is failing, and that's all due to science. So I think that science is what will bring us closer to the truth. If there is an absolute truth, then science is basically probably the only means by getting there. Because I just don't think that the human mind and imagination aspect, I think of dreams. I had fantastic dreams last night. Our minds can take us anywhere we want to go. And so when we get away from that and just rely just on science, science works. I'm speaking to you now. Atoms and electrons follow natural laws. We have been studying those laws and understanding how they work, and look at what we can do now because of it. And so I think that I would also think that if you're speaking on human evolution or the human advancement, science is going to be the only means by which we continue to advance. And if science and spiritualism ever find a link, then everybody will be spiritual. But so far, there's still a lot of gray area there. And I think it's quite interesting, in behalf of my spiritual friends, how sciences such as quantum physics and even neurology, such as consciousness, are still mysterious things. So there is still possibly a future for spiritualism. We just don't know yet. We don't know where it's going, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. And I would encourage everybody to not fear science. Embrace it.
Would you say that there is any kind of caution that we need to have with
No.
how we are embracing science in our world?
I don't fear it, and my answer would be no. And a lot of people bring up things like nuclear bombs. Well, science brought us the nuclear bomb. Well, I don't care if it's a spear or a black powder gun. Humans will invent violent things no matter what. but we shouldn't say we should stop science because of it, because if you don't have a nuclear bomb, it's going to be something else, right? Because you can take that science that created a nuclear bomb, now you can create free energy for everybody. So, I mean, it's just a matter of, don't fear science, just fear bad people. That's what it is. Fear governments, corrupt governments, fear rebellious movements that want to kill people, or movements to say we want to change the world, or things like these are scary. This is scary stuff. Science is not scary. People are scary. So
so in the wrong hands, science
yes,
is scary because it could be
absolutely in the wrong. It has been. We did use the nuclear bomb. We wiped out thousands of women and children in a nuclear blast. Crippled many of them. Watch Hiroshima. Yeah, I mean, this is very important. We need to, all people who are spiritual, all atheists, we need to preach love. That's number one. Number one before science. I'm blown away that we don't have, our schools don't teach Love 101 in high school. I mean, come on, why are we failing as a species? We need to teach unity and love, and I'm sorry, religion has had 2,000 years to do this, and they've failed. It's time for atheists to get out there and say, hey, cut the crap. Let's just love each other.
Very interesting. I'm glad that you have a chance to show that, because that is something that I don't think some religious people are able to see that within the atheists, that there is a lot of love there, and that the need to change society actually comes born from a wanting of a better world for all. So
and let me tell you that Christianity works against that, and I'll share with you how. Most people don't connect the dots, but in Christianity, you have people, a large majority of Christians hope for the world to burn, hope for disasters. They see the apocalypse coming. They're hoping for Jesus to return, so they don't really care. In fact, when they see the world in trouble, it actually excites them. They think that it's nearing, that Jesus is going to come. So why do they care when Jesus is just going to come and destroy everybody and burn the planet? You see, they don't care. Yeah. In fact, part of them longs for it. And so that's why I fight so passionately against Christianity and Islam and things like this. So people like you, spiritual people, and people like me who are atheists or agnostics, we need to join each other. We need to sit at this white council and talk about this. How do we get unity, and how do we start caring about other people in the planet, and then let science do wonderful things for us all.
It's funny that you talked about the idea of this wanting to bring forth the apocalypse. I'm actually going to reveal my last video on wrath and the nature of wrath, and my own personal struggles with wrath. And what you said is that a lot of people, and I have seen it, Jeff, you are not lying about this. A lot of people are actually looking for the ending of the world. I mean, they really do. I mean, there's so many YouTube videos about, oh, it's the apocalypse and it's the ending of everything. And I have seen that type of video go on for many, many years. And here we are still. And I like to see the apocalypse more of the, well, in the Greek meaning of the word, the veil is thinning and being lifted, and something else is being shown. And so I believe that that's what the apocalypse is. So I think that you really brought in a very true point. And I even struggled with this, not as a religious person, but as a person that viewed myself separate from others, separate from the whole world. And so I will be going further into this on my video, so I'm going to leave it, but it's coming up.
Okay.
The transformation of wrath. And It's in my light work series, which basically is about shadow work of Carl Jung, if you understand about psychology and know a little bit about him. And so what you touched on is very, very true. There are a lot of people hoping for the destruction of others, destruction of the world. And a lot of the comments that really is very hurtful, and some religious people might not know this, a lot of Christians might not know this, and maybe it's good for them to hear this coming from you and coming from me too now, is that when they see a comment such as, everyone's going to burn in hell, I don't care, you know, the world's going to be destroyed and I'm going to be with Jesus, it comes off very hurtful. Why is this person wanting to destroy, you know, everyone except themselves? And a lot of it is because that Christian is still very much within the idea of separation from others. So if atheists can bring forth that type of representation, and maybe they just have to have a new label, like you kind of touched on, like maybe atheist is too hard of a word, you know, it's too harsh of a word and a label that scares people away because it means no theist, you know, theist. It means just against theism. And so there needs to be this new, I guess, this way that atheists can be looked at. And I think that that's very true, is like what you touched on about the idea of how Christians are actually wanting the apocalypse to happen. A lot of them have been wanting that for a long time. And I am very adamant on my own channel to let people know that it's not going to be angels coming. It's not going to be aliens coming from a UFO. It is our consciousness rising up into higher dimensions and perceptions that will open up to have a greater experience of love and understanding with one another. I mean, we can go that.
You know, I think that goes in line with reality. Yeah, I think we've seen that in humanity just in the last 100 years. We've got a long ways to go, but let's face it, I don't think any of us would like to back up and live 100 years ago.
No, I think you're very, very right. I mean, I definitely see that humanity has gone through a mental evolution. We may not be finished with our physical evolution. I believe that we still are evolving physically, but I also believe that we are going through a spiritual evolution. And that is going to bring forth, you know, a lot of new perceptions into reality. The other question I had was, why do you think religion is against science so much? What is this, I guess, this resistance?
That's super easy. It's because science exposes fable.
Okay.
That's it. It's that simple.
Because I know that a lot of times religious leaders a lot of times preach, you know, the evilness of science. And of course, I mean, a lot of our greatest scientists were actually considered heretics of the church. And they, you know, they were in prison. I mean, in Copernicus and all those, they were always...
Yeah, exactly. It's never changed. It's always been the same. The Bible is riddled with passages against intellectualism and free thinking. You can read the New Testament from beginning to end. In every book, you're going to come across something where the wise are fools. Don't question, you know, don't be intellectual, have faith as a child. I mean, this goes so far back. When Christianity, Rome was starting to become a scientific country with great libraries. The Library of Alexandria and schools and institutions were rising until Christianity took dominance in the 3rd century, and then we entered the Dark Ages because Christianity suppressed thinking, suppressed science. The Library of Alexandria, what a wealth if that survived, if we had that today. It was burned down because religious people don't want intellectualism. They don't want science. You know, thankfully, after 2,000 years and 1,500 years through a dark ages, we have finally broke that yoke where science is finally free. It's no longer being held back by religious communities.
Have you been aware of Christian scientists because they themselves are scientists or interested in science, but they consider themselves Christian scientists?
Well, I think you might be referring to recent Christian scientists, because Galileo was almost murdered by Christians for saying that the planet orbits around the sun. But if you're speaking about recent Christian scientists, yes, there are. Christianity has had to become more malleable. It has had to become softer around the edges and accept that maybe a lot of its stories are metaphor and these kind of things. So you do have Christians that still hold on to the faith, but yet they bend a little bit more to try to keep up with modern science.
Do you think that Christian scientists, along with atheists or agnostics who are involved with science, do you think that they could ever, meet on a middle field somewhere and understand one another?
I think they try, and I think we're going through that point in history where Christian scientists are just becoming lesser and lesser of a thing, because it's getting harder and harder to marry the two together. So I think what we are in the process of seeing is a rather fast human evolution of consciousness, where Christians and science are, I think Christian scientists are either completely abandoning their faith or divorcing science and running to Noah's Ark and Ken Ham and reverting back to the Bible and saying, I don't care about science anymore. It's becoming tough for Christian scientists. It's becoming very, very difficult. I don't think there's much of that existing anymore. I think it's a passing phase.
I was under the impression, just because I know in my own city, they are known for their very wealthy organizations, and they have a very big building. I guess you would say that it's a branch of Scientology, Christian Science, but there's something else. I guess you don't have to be a Scientologist to be a Christian Scientist.
Okay, if you're talking within the church, there is still like Christian Creation Institute, and they still have their schools and things, but that's not a part of mainstream science. Like, you're not going to find those departments in Harvard or Yale or Duke. I mean, they just don't exist in the mainstream academic world. They kind of have their own Christian scientific institutions that are tied and supported by the church, and I would say that's kind of a different thing. And yes, they are definitely in a battle with mainstream science.
Interesting, very interesting. I think that is where we have to go in the future, is to have those people be given a little bit more of a voice. Maybe I'll invite them onto the White Council, find one that's a scientist that wants to speak a little bit more about how do they bridge science with spirituality, and where is that marriage that they have found. And then that way atheists and agnostics can understand where they are coming from. I know that a lot of them try to use the verses in the Bible to show, well, this is what science says, and then they show, the verses in the Bible. So yeah, I mean, it's. I think you said, and you touched base on it, just the idea of human evolution consciousness. What I have noticed, Jeff, and maybe you can speak about this too, is that more and more people. And I don't think that guilt needs to be attached to this, because I know that you were brought up in a Christian household and you were religious at one point. And I think that a lot of people have a fear of leaving their organized religion because of guilt and shame, and a feeling of, your family is going to be upset with you and things like that. How did you manage to, to break away from religion, to remain? You say you're not a spiritual person, but I do see a sense of spirituality within you.
I like spirituality.
Well, I see it within you. So it might be the remnants from, your Christian upbringing. It might be just who you are as an individual. But
Yeah,
I
I don't
see
know.
that within you as a person. So how were you able to kind of move away from your religion and not experience feelings of guilt, or at least how did you get through that? I mean, can you help anybody so that they understand that it doesn't mean that you're losing your love or your respect for Jesus, or your respect even for the idea of love, charity, generosity, godliness? But how do you divorce yourself from the organized religion that does control people's lives, and it has caused a lot of issues within our world with the religious leaders that we've had?
Well, okay, I think that you're touching on a really big misunderstanding, and that is people who like deconvert from a religion. In the mind of other people, they think like, oh, one day he just said, I don't believe anymore, and just turned it off. That's not how it works at all. It took many, many years for me of waking up and slowly realizing, oh, okay, this is wrong. Maybe I need to change this a little bit, tweak this a little bit. And then 5 years later, I'm finally like, wow, I just don't believe any of this. It's almost as if the brain, when you've been indoctrinated, it won't take the water and just turn off the cold and turn on the hot. The brain won't do that. It's not like a switch. The brain requires a lot of time to readjust and change its belief systems. So it's something that probably took, for a complete deconversion, probably took 3 to 4 years for me, of thinking, okay, well, maybe Jesus didn't mean this, he meant that. And then a year later, I'm thinking, okay, well, I just don't even believe in hell anymore. What these scriptures really mean is this and this and this. And then 3 years later, I'm thinking, wow, I don't even think the Bible's correct. And then 4 years later, I'm like, there's nothing here for me. I just don't believe in any of it. So it's a slow process. And I think the other part that you were trying to get from me is that how do you deal with the pressure of it with family or loved ones and people? For me, it was easy because I've been a lone wolf. I don't really have family. My father died. My mom left me when I was 5. I still don't know who she is. So I've kind of been unfortunate with family. So that was not a thing for me. But there's a lot of people who have deconverted that follow my page that do have these struggles, do express them to me. A lot of them do not ever want to be tagged in posts or on my page because they're afraid family members might see it.
No.
So there are people that are very worried about their religious family members finding out they no longer believe. And they are hidden up in a closet. And there are people who have said, I came out of the closet and my family won't talk to me anymore. They think they're taken by the devil. I mean, yes, you're touching on a very sensitive and real terrible situation that organized religion creates.
Mm. So really, I mean, it is really just a slow process, and it comes from a place of just being confident and gaining that confidence in who you are and what you believe and your core values, and becoming almost like a lone wolf. I mean, I think I'm a lone wolf in a lot of ways too, and I think that actually there's a positiveness to that where you're not attached to other people. And so
you're liberated in a lot of ways.
you are, yeah, you're very free. And so, I mean, I think that is a really positive way of being able to kind of divorce yourself from organized religion. But to be able to kind of, I like what it's called a living religion, in the idea that it's a living spirituality that is not organized. You never have to go to a building. You never have to worship with others. You don't have to listen to another person preach to you. And what it is it's taking the ideas that you have, I guess, respected and admired from religion, and embrace that as a person. And it kind of transforms you into who you are today. And I think
it's beautiful.
Well, that's the idea of a living religion and a living spirituality, and making it more what you apply into your life rather than what sect you belong to, what label you are. And because there is something very sad, and I saw it within the Muslim community, I see it within Christian community, I see it within the Jewish community, and I see it within other types of religions around the world that are not maybe the mainstream. But what happens is there is a way of sectioning yourself off with only those people. It's like you can have friends. If you're a Christian, you can have friends. Oh, you could be friends with a Jew. You could be friends with a Muslim. You could be friends with other people. But there's always this way of family either tempting you, or your pastor, or the people that you go to, where they almost make you want to only be, I guess, friends with and acquainted with those people of the same beliefs. And I think that that's really the evil part of it, is it's sectioning you off from others. And
yeah, the more on fire you become for your belief, like say, I like to use Christianity example because we all are so familiar with it. The more on fire you become for your belief, the more you separate yourself from other people, non-believers, friends that don't believe, or friends that are, what do they call it, lukewarm people in your life. You'll tend to separate. So the more you get involved in your church, the more you separate yourself from others.
Now that to me is probably the most wrong that can come out of religion, because I myself am all about us forming more of a connection to one another. I'm an introvert. I don't want to be 100% attached to everybody, but I do want to have a spiritual link to all souls so that we can find this interconnection that we all have. And we want to give peace to each other, because we know that in giving peace to another person is really giving peace to ourselves. And I think that that's probably the saddest part of organized religion, is it does, it gets into your mind in which you think you're kind of tricked into this way of thinking. Now, some of the religions that are more the Universalists and the Universalism and Baha'i faith, those types of religions are actually not doing that, which is good, because they read from lots of different books, and they have people of all different faiths come to the churches or come to the temple, and they actually sit and they talk about each other's faiths. And I think that that type of universalism can promote being friends with other religious people. I mean, you basically are, it's almost like you're asked to be friends with other people that are different from you. But that is something that I think that is very sad to me as somebody who wants to help build more connection to other souls. I feel like religion is my enemy in that sense, where it is disconnects.
Yeah. Let me add to that, you're right, because the main problem with religion is when they start building these theologies and these frameworks, and they think that they are right. And then they have this crazy idea that they want to go over to other people and convince other people that they are right. And instead of appreciating some other country's culture and spiritualism, they go over there and try to eradicate other people's beliefs and cultures and try to make everybody like them.
Oh, you're talking about like the missionaries that go to Africa or go to all these different places.
Yeah, I mean, you get, it doesn't matter. Sometimes religion can be dangerous because they start thinking that they are right and they want to tell everybody else that they are wrong. So what happens is you go around, and if you're powerful enough, you will start going and converting people all around the world, and all you're doing is eradicating other people's cultures. You're destroying other people's spirituality and other people's cultures. And it's just, it's terrible. And so I like your approach. I like your approach. How that is not the way to go about spirituality. It sounds like that's what was in your voice and in your words anyways.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that really bothers me, is that when because I have gone to Christian churches, with friends, and I have been on Muslim Facebook pages. They're mystics and they're Sufis, but at the same time, they still, there's something in the back of your mind in which you don't belong to a certain religion. Like you said, it's they're weak.
You're not numbered. You're not counted among them.
Exactly, you're not counted among them, and so there is this disconnect. So yeah, absolutely, I believe that.
Yeah.
Really,
we need to end that madness. It's gone on too long.
Yeah.
We're all together in this. We're all here together. Even our dogs, our cats, the rabbits in my backyard, we are all here together. We're all numbered together. We all are born and die the same. So we need to start understanding that and living by that understanding, all of us.
I agree. I think that that's really great to hear that from somebody who has a different point of view, but actually we're finding out that we have very similar ideas. The other question I had before you go, as we're getting to that time.
I don't have a timer, but I know it's probably reaching that time.
Yeah, we're talking a lot, but the other question I had was, what do you think about the nature of artificial intelligence and what that can say about religion and what that can say about the nature of God or consciousness? Is that something that you also see that can pose a threat from religion? Are you against artificial intelligence? What's your perception?
Well, I think right now that concept is in favor of spiritualism because we don't understand how consciousness works. I mean, why are we conscious? Why aren't we like AI? What makes us conscious? That's a very mysterious thing that the scientific community is working hard on right now, very hard, and there still is no proper understanding. So, you know, I think that AI, artificial intelligence, the question is probably, could it ever become conscious like we are? Well, I just don't know. We're a long ways from being there. At what point do you have enough neural connections that something becomes conscious like us? I don't know. Maybe there's a spiritual element to us that transcends matter, and that's why we have a conscious experience like we do. And AI will never have that because it originates from strictly matter, not from a spiritual sense. So there's still a lot of open doors. I mean, you're really touching on a subject matter that I'm not going to be able to satisfy you. We don't have the answers. If you say you do have the answers, I won't believe you. And I will just say, I don't know. I mean, we're just not there. I'm excited about AI. I'm not scared of AI. I want AI. I want advancement. I love what advancement brings to us if we remain healthy and loving. You know, it doesn't matter how advanced you are. I mean, if you're a bad person, a baseball bat will be destructive. You don't, you know, we need to try to differentiate and get rid of that fear of science with being destructive and embrace it and just go, everybody, you, me, everybody. I wish Christians would join us and spread unity and love and not condemnation and not death of the planet and you know, continue to evolve our love, and then we can embrace AI with less fear, and the mysteries will begin to unfold. What will AI bring? I don't know, but I'm sure it will be exciting.
Okay. Now, the last thing I'll finish off with is the idea of, so a lot of my subscribers and followers are actually religious in nature, and they were interested in the last video that we did, and they thought that you came off as a very, you know, nice person and you had good intentions and you really enjoyed listening to you. What would you say?
Well, thank you.
As, yeah. What would you say as an atheist or as somebody who is within the atheist community? What would you say to a person that does not want to get rid of their label as a Christian or as, you know, a Muslim or a Jew or a Hindu, somebody who really defines themselves as a label? What would you say about that person who does not want to get rid of their label, but yet they are a very loving person and they can love you for who you are? What would you say about that?
I would say if they're Christian or Muslim, that they're fooling themselves, that they are ignoring the belief that is sitting right in their subconscious. It is there, it is the base and core of their belief that their brothers and sisters by the billions are going to be tortured in hell, and they have to make themselves okay with that. And I'm sorry, that creates a cold position. And it creates a division in your mind, whether you embrace it or not. It is there. The you and me aspect of life. You're going to go to hell. I'm going to go to heaven. They try not to point people out, but they know that billions and billions of people are going to burn. So I think if you have a Christian that is struggling with this situation, this theology, I would say that within 3, 4, 5 years, they just won't be Christian anymore.
And they would finally basically just kind of divorce.
They'll wake up.
Okay.
They'll wake up and divorce it. It's a slow process. It doesn't happen overnight. But I think the people who are starting to struggle with their theology in the sense that you just displayed it, I would call those Christians and Muslims on the fence. And usually, if they continue to study, continue to wake up, within 3 to 4 years, they're usually deconverted completely. Maybe they'll come to you and join your page. That would be wonderful. They don't have to become an atheist. Just get rid of that awful theology.
Okay, that you touched on a very important part, that you don't want them to necessarily become an atheist, but you want them to be able to find another way, another path than the organized religion that has been teaching them these kind of these harmful things and these ideas that you are speaking out against. So would you?
It's simply recognizing evil and calling evil evil and embracing good and rejecting bad. That's all it is.
So would you be able to be friends with a person who was of a religious nature? Are you friends with
Yeah. Yeah, my very best friend and roommate is a devout Christian.
Oh, wow. Okay. And how does that work between you two?
We don't talk about religion. You know, it's funny because there's two things that there's a tradition, at least American tradition, that at Thanksgiving at the dinner table, there's two things you don't talk about: politics and religion.
Wow.
So it's very important that we don't get into these subjects with our loved ones and people who are really close to us.
But sometimes they do have a way of creeping up. I know that
Yeah.
in my life. And then what do? You just say, I don't want to discuss it. You know, I think this can help people of how they deal with the differences. So how do you go about dealing with the differences between another person who's religious and you just do not agree with that?
Well, as far as my friend goes, we have a long friendship. We've been music partners for 15 years and a history of great friendship. We just agree to disagree, and we just frankly don't talk about it. It just goes that way. There's marriages that are that way. There's people that are religious in marriages, and it's kind of the same thing. I mean, a lot of times, you know, one person will start to become more religious or the other one will start to become not so. And you can start opening up and having a dialogue about it. But if you're just completely in two separate worlds of belief and you want to maintain a healthy friendship or marriage or family unity, you kind of just don't bring it up. I always tell my followers, you know, don't try to attack religion to your friends and your family members. Take it out and do it with strangers if you have a desire to debate or battle these kind of issues out. It's not healthy to do it with people in your home.
That's wise advice, very wise. I would say that there's a testament of strength to your friend, because does he know what you have been doing in the videos that you've been posting and things like that?
We're roommates. Yeah, I do it right here in the house. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so he's a very strong person, and he's not condemning you or taking it to that level.
Yeah, I suppose if he was a real traditional practicing Christian, it would be very different. But my friend does not go to church. He doesn't pray over dinner. He has no Christian friends. It's just he grew up Christian, and he just doesn't want to let go of that. So that's kind of the situation. But he would be what you would call a lukewarm Christian. And we've had little conversations, and he thinks that, he just takes Christianity a little bit more lightly, doesn't think everybody's going to hell who doesn't believe. But if he were to challenge himself, he would have to rebuke some things about his faith. But he just doesn't go that deep, and I don't push him on it.
See, my perspective on your roommate is that he's the true Christ follower, because he's actually embracing others who are different and loving them no matter what. And I think that he is the true example of a Christ follower rather than some of the other Christians that this.
The truth is, though, using him as an example of that, what is really going on is that he is rejecting many aspects of his faith and not practicing it. And so if he were to spend time thinking about his faith or studying his faith, he would become a non-believer.
I think I'm talking about like the archetype of Jesus. He's following rather than the organized religion version, more kind of the archetypal teacher of Jesus he's following. And I think that's really nice.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
That's really great that you were able to have that relationship. And I'm so glad that I asked that question to show that an atheist and a theist can actually live under the same roof, and they can actually come together in mutual respect. And they can and you don't have to be rude and, cruel to one another, which is what we see online a lot. We see a lot of this back and forth, which is just, we have to stop that. And I'm going to put my fist down on the council and say that we have to stop that.
Yeah, it's the same with politics. I mean, my roommate is a great supporter of Trump, and hey, I'm sorry, guys, I liked Bernie Sanders. I did. And so it's the same thing. We just don't talk about it. So if we talk about Trump, we're going to start getting mad at each other. So we just don't discuss it.
Well, that's really great, Jeff. I've learned a lot more about you. My subscribers have learned a lot more about you. I think that's really wonderful when you told me that some people have actually, now we talked about this offline, but I do want my subscribers to know this, that you have noticed and you've observed that some people from my channel have come over to your channel and have just had conversations or left comments. And I think
they've been active. Yeah, they've been active.
My goal was to bridge a gap and an understanding between one another. And I think that that's really great, because I do have a lot of religious people that do watch my channel. A lot are pagans and a lot are more spiritualists. But then I also do have a lot of religious people, because I do use the metaphor of religion to understand ourselves in a subconscious way and what it all means on a consciousness level. But I do think that that's really great, Jeff. I'm really happy that a lot of people have come over, and and I think that that's really great. I think that that was the goal, and I'm happy.
It goes both ways. Yeah, I have followers too that no doubt are checking you out, and my administrator, Judy, likes you. So I'm probably pretty sure she's liked and followed. So it's going to happen when you create a dialogue between people like you and me. You're going to have people that cross the fences. So, and that's a good thing.
That is a very good thing. Okay, well, I think that this White Council meeting has been very successful, and I thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome.
All right.
Very welcome. All right. Bye-bye.